We are going to break down the Monday Night Football slate today. There are 3 captains that stand out above the rest, and there is a cheaper player that not a lot of people understand the new role that he has on this team, and because of that, another cheap player is going to be owned, but this guy really should. So let's get into it. Let's get into it not now, but let's get into it. Beautiful people out there right now. So in the order of how much these beautiful players cost, why don't we break down this slate like we normally do? And we could start up top with Mr. Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara only saw 17 opportunities last week, which was the least he has seen since week 2, the second least he's seen on the year so far. But now, the news, if you have not yet already heard, is that Mr. Ian Book out of Notre Dame is the starting quarterback for these New Orleans Saints. So a lot of the stuff and a lot of the splits with Taysom Hill, and then you look at compared to Drew Brees, compared to Jameis Winston, small sample. Now you can kind of throw all that stuff out the window because you got Ian Book in this game now. So what we can fall back on is that they like to use this man a lot. 20 plus opportunities in every game but 2 so far this year. So what I think you're going to see versus Taysom Hill, and what I am putting into my projections, and I can share with you out there today, full projections below if you want to see them, is that Alvin Kamara's target share is going to rise a decent, not significant, but a decent amount, and his touchdown overall upside is likely going to slightly drop. Not by a lot, but slightly drop. It is still a somewhat mobile quarterback back there in Ian Book, who ran for nearly 45 rushing yards per game each game his final 2 years at college. So that factor with Taysom Hill is going to be pretty similar from stealing your rushing touchdowns, but it's just the fact that it's a short week with Ian Book now in this game, right? It's not a world beater defense in Miami, but it has been improving this entire season, and that can't be good. That can't be good for Ian Book compared to Taysom Hill when you don't have that type of chemistry and just the experience running an offense. Taysom Hill might not be great, but at least he has the experience. So that's where it starts to become, as a later round pick for Ian Book, a little bit of a concern for me when I'm building out projections on how many touchdowns these guys are going to score. And I think that we can all agree, Vegas agrees with that when you see that the Saints have a 17.5, the lowest on the week, 17.5 team implied total for how many points they're going to score this week. So because of that, at $12,200, which is one of the most expensive price tags you will ever see on a showdown slate, I'm not going to have an overwhelming, I have to prioritize Alvin Kamara. He's going to clearly be in play. Alvin Kamara is my second highest projected play on this slate. I only have players projected above 11 fantasy points today, basically 4 dudes, and he is one of them. So he stays in play from a pure scoring standpoint, of course, but at $12,200, he's not going to be prioritized as a captain for me. And in general, there is a potential other combination of players that might not lead to me getting him. Now, when I look at this and I see who is going to be the most optimal player to get into a lineup for me, if I'm looking at this slate right now, I would say that Alvin Kamara is probably in the winning lineup around 50% of the time, so it keeps him in play. This next player, I'm very confused by Jalen Waddle's price tag. I mean, since Devontae Parker has come back, you have Mike Gesicki now there, you have Jalen Waddle still seeing targets, of course, but it's not like he's getting insane downfield usage, and he's not getting these 15 target games like when Devontae Parker was out. So now at $11,600, I'm a little bit confused as to why I would play Jalen Waddle when I have him projecting for basically 11 fantasy points right now. Similar players who are thousands of dollars cheaper than Jalen Waddle just look as good, if not better than him. So it's tough for me to want to get to Jalen Waddle. Again, I think that the guy is great, right? He ended up missing last week, but he's running 35 routes per game on a 24% target share on 9 targets per game this year. Yeah, but a lot of that is with Devontae Parker, half of it, Devontae Parker out, right? He has 30 targets over his last 3 games, 16 fantasy points in 4 of his last 5 games. I get all of that, but there's a big difference here now that he has $11,600 on this slate. And his team only has a 20-point implied total if you're looking for a touchdown upside. At $11,600, if you're a wide receiver, for you to pay off, not just in the captain spot, but in the lineup, you likely have to pile up somewhere around 6 to 8 receptions, which he can do, or hit 100 yards and a touchdown. All those things are possible, of course, but that's what has to happen. You can't get away with a 6-catch, 70-yard performance at $11,600. So when you're paying up all the way up top for a stud today, if you're choosing one of these guys, for me, it would personally be Alvin Kamara. And as of right now, as of this recording, I would not be getting to Jalen Waddle. Now, as the live stream later on today approaches, we can potentially change and pivot our thoughts there if Jalen Waddle is looking significantly under-owned. But right now, if Waddle starts to come in around 35% owned, I'm just not going to be getting there. So you get to these next 2 players now, and it's going to be a combination that I do like from the exact same team. Why not stack them together? Tua Tagovailoa is my highest projected player on the slate. Well, he's not the most expensive player. He's not the second most expensive player. So I'm probably going to have some good interest in Tua Tagovailoa. I think that Tua is probably the number 1 play on the slate in terms of hitting a winning lineup today at $10,200. He has not been elite this year. Yeah, people might reference, but he's top 5 in QBR. Okay, he's been accurate this year because of the RPOs, because of the fact that he is throwing the ball short, he is throwing the ball quick, and it's increasing his accuracy. It's increasing some underlying stats. Miami throws the 8th most times in the league this year, so it's increasing his overall volume and accounting stats for the quarterback position. He is definitely going to have a tough O-line matchup this week, but he does every single week because this offensive line for this team is terrible. He's throwing about 30 times per game right now, and you're getting him so far on the season to rank 32nd in deep attempts. So when I say that he's benefiting from throwing the ball short, this is exactly what I mean. He is still though, at 10,200 for a quarterback on a showdown slate. He is still firmly in play. For me, I just don't expect a 30-point game, and I'm really not expecting that from anybody on this slate. His wide receiver, Devontae Parker, who is over $2,000 cheaper than Jalen Waddle. I get it, Jalen Waddle's target share is higher, but Devontae Parker, the reason why he is cheaper right now, in my opinion, is because he's just been hurt, and he hasn't had the weeks and the months that Jalen Waddle had to build up this price tag, right? I mean, Devontae Parker is averaging so far this season. He has played 7 games. He is averaging 8 targets per game and has seen at least 7 targets in 6 out of 7 games. A 22.5% target share compared to the target share of Jalen Waddle around 25%. Like, it's not that far off. And if you're looking at the size and body builds of these guys, yeah, Devontae Parker is going to be the better red zone weapon over time compared to Jalen Waddle. So this was like $1,000 difference, and I thought I can get 1 or 2 more targets out of Waddle on a showdown slate. That's fair, but at a $2,200 difference, I currently prefer Devontae Parker. And Devontae Parker, out of all the players that we've talked about so far, is likely going to be my first captain option that we talked about. I told you that we got 3. I told you that we got 3, people. I told you we have 3 captain options, and I told you that there's a cheap player today that a couple of cheap players in play, but one people are just going to write off as, it's nothing. But no. He has a role change today that not a lot of people, you Saints fans out there right now, but not a lot of people are understanding and knowing about, and we're here to tell you that so you can win some dollars. Isn't that the goal for you to win some dollar-ooskies? Yes, it is. And if you want to win some dollar-ooskies, why not get in on a prop right now? A little bit of a spoiler alert, but since we talked about Devontae Parker, I have Parker over 42.5 receiving yards today, and I am schmacking right in the face the under Nick Vinnette 2.5 receptions. Now, Adam Trotman and Juwan Johnson, some other tight ends on this team are on the COVID list, so people might think that Nick Vinnette, a run-blocking tight end first who catches a ball every once in a while, they might think that this is the dude who's going to fill in as the full-time tight end. We'll get to that, and we'll tell you exactly why he's not. But just for now, the under 2.5 receptions. You combine those two together. You use the promo code CLASS. Today is the last day. As week 16 ends. The last day to use the code CLASS to get a free bet up to $100. But more importantly, it is the last day for the offer for my daily fantasy course for free. It's a 10-plus hour course. You go ahead, you get it completely free if you use the code CLASS on prizepicks.com, and it's an over-under site. That DFS course is an exclusive product that you can't get just by not doing this. So if you want to get it right now, 10 plus hours of DFS courses on how to actually win and how to use game theory and the theory of DFS and not just your emotions and actually win some money. Yesterday, a $5,200 profit day was a relatively bad day, but a good day overall. Yes, that is what you can do if you end up educating yourself a little bit more. So use the code CLASS on prizepicks.com. You get the free $100 bet, and that is your last day. So act now. The next man up now is going to be fun. It's going to make this slate a little bit fun because it increases a wild card. Like if we had Taysom Hill out there, we kind of know what to expect at this point. You're going to have like 150 passing yards, maybe 200, and you're going to go for like 50 on the ground with some upside. You're probably going to get the same fucking thing from Ian Book, the guy at Notre Dame, but at least there's a little bit of a wild card of could this go extremely well? Could this go extremely poor? Our defense hasn't had weeks and months of tape and film to watch on Mr. Ian Book and find out what his flaws are like they do with a Taysom Hill. So maybe you get a Mike White situation, maybe not to that extreme of 400 passing yards, but you understand what I'm saying. It increases the curiosity factor of tonight's slate, and that's honestly keeping me, one of the main reasons I'm probably even going to tune into this game is to see what Ian Book looks like, if not for the whole game, for part of it. Look, he has size and speed for sure. He has 80th percentile speed at the quarterback position. He ran for 41.5 rushing yards per game his final 25 games, which ended up being his final 2 seasons at Notre Dame, and he was decent there. 7.8 yards per attempt, a 62% completion percentage. I know that it's a totally different test against a Miami secondary that is trending in the right direction with defensive backs and safeties that are playing awfully well as of late. But when I look at Ian Book from a showdown slate trying to win money on DFS standpoint, he is $9,000 as a mobile quarterback, and he is my 3rd highest projected player on this slate, even though he is priced as the 5th most expensive, and he is priced nowhere near the top, $3,000 off the tag of Alvin Kamara. Ian Book is firmly in play. So this range right here of like Ian Book, Parker, and Tua, I expect it to garner some ownership, so obviously get different in different places, but playing those 3 guys together is maybe one reason why you can't get or won't get to Alvin Kamara if that was the lineup build that you chose. I said Devontae Parker is a captain option, right? So we anointed Devontae Parker as the number 1, put the crown on his head, the number 1, put the crown on his head, the belt, the crown on his head right here, how you doing, right? Take care, brush your hair. Ian Book is number 2. Ian Book is the number 2 captain option today. We got one, well, By the way, there's about 5 or 6 captains in play. I'm just telling you about the top 3 that look good early on. Ian Book is number 2. Devontae Parker, Ian Book. There's one more as we slide down this list right now for you beautiful people. And as we slide down this list, we hit a dead range that we've talked about on previous episodes in the past, but it's kind of like if this guy scores a touchdown, he'll be in play. But this 7K range is disgusting. There's nobody in the 8K range, so it goes from Ian Book, and now realistically to me, like you might go $2,000 before there's another good play, but guys that are at least in play, all 3 of these dudes are in play: Marquez Callaway, Gaskin, and Duke Johnson, but it's not looking good. So up top for Marquez Callaway, he has a replacement quarterback. He hasn't been great at all this year. He's only averaging 4.9 targets per game to begin with. He had a nice game and popped off against Tampa Bay secondary, a secondary that has been banged up. It has definitely gotten healthier, but overall has not been great this season. But that being said, now he has a totally different quarterback. I think that he can stay in play as an X on the outside with some speed to him, so he remains in play. This Miami running back situation is interesting. I think I'd lean Myles Gaskin because Myles Gaskin is going to come in lower owned because everybody and their mother is going to say, Sal, Duke Johnson is the starting running back of the Miami Dolphins. And I'll say, maybe, right? Or maybe like the post-game press conference last week said, and the press conferences leading up, that they weren't going to use Myles Gaskin all that much. And after the game, they said that he was still having some lingering effects, right? Being winded, being gassed, cardiovascular issues from C19. So now with another week to go by and him getting these full practices in, it seems like Myles Gaskin is good to go. Now, I don't think Myles Gaskin is good as a running back. I think Duke Johnson is probably better, right? Myles Gaskin is younger, but he's undersized. He's also slow. Like, he doesn't have a great speed relative to most NFL running backs. He's undersized, so when he hits the inside, it's not great. When he has breakaway speed, upside, potential chance of it, it's not there. He's good in the pass catching game, I'll give him that, but so is Duke Johnson. So I think that these two dudes look a lot like each other. Duke Johnson, a little bit bigger, a little bit better. And when you're looking at it, same price tag, I think you're going to see a split roll here. I think because Duke Johnson is cheaper and people are going to see what he did last week when they go and click his name on DraftKings and just remember him popping off, they're going to think that he's going to get the full workload. And he could. But if you're telling me to choose between one of these two running backs, I'll choose Myles Gaskin for who I think gets a similar role today, could even get a starting job back, comes in as the favorite, and likely is going to come in lower owned today. So that range is gross. There's nobody in the 8K range. You get 2 guys in the 9K range, and then this 7K range is gross. So very quickly you find yourself in a barren wasteland where this 7K range, although it looks disgusting, might actually come into play as needing a leverage play from there, just from a necessity of being in that price range. Now, Mike Gesicki, by far and away, I don't know how he's not in the 7K range. I don't know how he's not in the 8K range. I understand recent play could factor into that somewhat, but he's still getting volume. When Devontae Parker came back, he kind of took away the 100% of the snaps out wide for Mike Gesicki that he was playing, but he's still playing in the 80% range. And it's not like he's just fallen off the face of the earth. I mean, he's coming off of games with 8 and 11 targets. I understand that in one of those games you did not have out there Jalen Waddle, but he's scoring in those games 12 and 9 fantasy points. Again, these are production metrics that are very similar, if not better, than Marquez Callaway these last 2 weeks, yet he's going to come in $1,400 cheaper than Marquez Callaway. I think that Mike Gesicki looks like a strong play. Shout out Penn State. Mike Gesicki at 6'6", 247 pounds. One of the best size speed specimens. The best tight end prospect to ever come out up until his point of the draft. Is averaging 7 targets per game on 30 routes per game. Both of those are top 3 for NFLs or tight ends in the NFL. He leads right now slot snaps. He currently leads all tight ends as operating as a wide receiver in the slot or out wide. Look, Mike Gesicki for me right now is basically tied for 4th with his teammate Jalen Waddle for projection today as of this recording. Right? And Jalen Waddle is $5,000 more expensive than Mike Gesicki. So Mike Gesicki, since he's projecting out well for me, since he has the red zone target share that looks decent for him, I'm putting him on here as a yes. And Mike Gesicki, when you say uno, when you say dos, when you say Mr. Trace Captain, he's the 3rd option. That might not even be proper Spanish. I apologize, right? A man thinks he eats a couple of tacos, eats some Tex-Mex now that he's in Texas, and thinks that he knows the language of Espanol, Spanish, so well. No, it's not even close. But hey, we tried. So, hey, Mike Gesicki, the 3rd captain option that I think is in play. Now you get to another range where he's the only guy in the 6K range. There's only one dude in the 5K range. The pricing on this slate is going to make for a fun live stream. I already know that. If you're not already tuning in for that live stream, then what are you doing? But now with Mark Ingram on the slate, look, they have a backup quarterback in who is mobile, but a backup quarterback, and you might get a little bit more rushing attempts. The touchdown upside is just not there right now at all, but he's still seeing a healthy snap share. Even with Kamara back last week, he saw 38% of the snaps against Tampa Bay and 11 touches. Maybe now he sees even more work, right? He's seeing targets in all these games. Not great. 8 yards last week in the receiving game on 2 targets. 2 targets the week before, he saw -2 yards, right? So I think his over-under passing yards on PrizePicks is like 8, 7.5. it's a tough one to want to pull the trigger on. But Ingram in this price range at $5,200, I think he has to be in play. Like, if you're going to get a running back who's going to see somewhere between 8 and 12 touches on a showdown slate, who has some red zone upside to him, yeah, he's not an elite play. Yeah, he's not a top 5 play in the slate. He's probably a borderline top 10 play in the slate, but I would probably start to lean over a Mark Ingram, maybe even over a Duke Johnson if Duke Johnson's going to come in with like 20% more ownership. The guy that I would prefer to have in this range is going to be Tre'Quan Smith. Tre'Quan Smith is coming into this game questionable, by the way. He's a little bit questionable as of right now to perform in this here game, but he's a nice price tag at $4,600. And look, he's a slot receiver. He's playing 70% of the snaps. He's operating directly out of the slot almost every single play that he's out there for. That should help Ian Book, a rookie who's looking to go to tight ends, who's maybe checking down, who's maybe rushing a little bit. And oh yeah, trying to hit the middle of the field, easier throws than an outside throw across the field, downfield to Marquez Callaway. So Tre'Quan Smith for $3,000, $3,000 less. Jeez, that's a discount. That's a steal. That's a bargain. $3,000 less than Marquez Callaway looks pretty damn good to me. Now, over the last 3 games, he only has 13 targets, but hell, 4 or 5 targets tonight on a showdown slate ain't bad for the price tag. And again, it's a totally different scenario now with a different quarterback in there. So I think Tre'Quan Smith looks good. If you're going to be trying to find a cheaper option today at the wide receiver position, I think that's where I lean to go to Tre'Quan Smith. And look, I mean, you're comparing Tre'Quan Smith at the $4,000 price range to not many other options. Like, there's Mark Ingram there, sure, but there's nobody else in the 5K range. The only other options in the 4K range right now, if you scroll down, are just kickers and defenses. And the kickers and defenses on a slate where it's not a high total, where it might be a field goal fest, yeah, they're firmly in play. Like, every single one of these kickers and defenses are in play. And if you ask me to choose one of them, it's really going to depend on your overall lineup and how it kind of somewhat correlates together. Like, I'll say Saints defense because they're the cheapest. They might leave the most money on the table. All of these kickers and defenses for me right now are projecting out on patreon.com right now below. I have ownership and projections down there. They're all projecting out for between 6.6 and 7.2 fantasy points. So it's a difference for the 4 of them of not even a half a fantasy point. All 4 of them are not even differentiating between a half a fantasy point. Their ownerships right now are between 20 and 24. So their ownerships are basically the same. So all of these dudes look very similar. All these dudes and all the kickers and all that, the defenses, their projections, their ownership, they all look like the exact same play today. If you're talking about who has a higher ceiling, I would say that the Saints have a slightly higher ceiling. And it's not by all that much. It's mainly because I'm projecting Tua to throw more. So what does that mean? Oh, well, if he's throwing more, if Tua throws 35 times in this game and Ian Book only throws 25 times, well, there's 10 more opportunities for interceptions, for sacks, for sack fumbles, for pick six, right? That's exactly where that starts to come from. So a little bit of a higher ceiling, I would say, for the Saints defense, and they're 3,800, so they're the cheapest. So if you're telling me to choose one of these, I'll say Saints defense, but the numbers, everything from the numbers is basically saying, so you have to try and build a narrative around it, basically saying these dudes are all the same. And another range of dudes that are all the same, meaning that they look pretty damn terrible, is this $3,000 to $2,000 range. Like, below $2,000, you actually have some options, but $3,000 to $2,000 is brutal. I mean, Phillip Lindsay is here. He's going to operate as the running back 3. He's expected to return. He's been nursing COVID, but before that, an ankle injury. Expected to return, but as the running back 3, I would say maybe 1 to 3 touches. I'm not interested. Isaiah Ford, this looks maybe somewhat interesting, but then you remember, oh, Jalen Waddle didn't play last week. Oh, Isaiah Ford ran as the wide receiver 4 last week because Jalen Waddle didn't end up playing. Like, he played 19 snaps, ran 10 routes, caught 3 balls for 51 yards, but now Jalen Waddle is back, and I would say that Isaiah Ford probably doesn't play at all, but maybe sees 2 or 4 snaps. Similar things can be said for Ty Montgomery, who is kind of a receiver for this team, operated as a running back when Kamara and Ingram were out. Now with Kamara and Ingram back, it's a tougher scene for Ty Montgomery to actually get on the field. Ty Montgomery, last week he actually saw wide receiver snaps. He saw 0 touches in week 15, but he ran 11 routes and 34% of the snaps in 4 of the last 5 games, but in a lot of those, at least Ingram or Kamara was out. Now that both of those guys are back, I would expect Ty Montgomery to operate maybe out of the slot for about 7 plays today, 8 plays today, especially since they're down some tight ends. Probably runs about 5 routes. Might see a target. If it's a target that's caught, it's a short target. So even at $200, Ty Montgomery probably wouldn't be in play. At $2,400, it's really tough. I have him for about 3 fantasy points, like a reception to a reception and a half today. That being said, I'm probably not going to get there. I just think the below $2,000 range looks a lot better today, and we can pull that whole range up right now. This range just looks a lot better than the 3 and the 2K range, and this is the guy that I wanted to let you all know about. This man right here, he is not going to be a world beater of a play because we're emphasizing and emphasizing him right now. We're emphasizing the syllables. If you get that, you get that. Pat yourself on the back. Because of that, it's going to seem like I really like this guy. I don't really like this guy. I think he's in the winning lineup 15% of the time, but I think people are going to own him at a lower clip, and I think people are going to think that his role is different than what it is. Lil Jordan Humphrey is a wide receiver. He's a wide receiver by draft, by trade, by how he's played for this team all year, but over the last week or two, since they've been battling injuries, Adam Trotman all season long, Juwan Johnson now on the COVID list, and Trotman on the COVID list as of this recording, not expected and not going to play, well, it leaves the only active tight end on their roster as of right now to be Nick Vinnette. But little Jordan Humphrey has a wide receiver designation, even on DraftKings. He's $1,800, but he's been operating as a tight end lately. He scored a touchdown as a tight end a couple of weeks back. Not a lot of people are going to know or think that. So they might own Nick Vinnette a little bit higher. They might own little Jordan Humphrey a little bit less as they think that he'll operate as the wide receiver 4 today. And by the way, Ty Montgomery is running a little bit more routes because Deontay Harris is finishing up his 3-game suspension. I believe this is his 3rd game suspended. So Ty Montgomery will probably run a couple of routes, which also bleeds into little Jordan Humphrey maybe running some more routes. But at 6'4", 210 pounds, he's good size. He's just really slow. But if you say that he's a tight end, well, then his speed actually becomes decent based on how you match it up against different players. I'd expect him to run more tight end snaps today, especially, they're going to miss today Adam Trotman and Juwan Johnson. So the guy that'll the sneaky guy, because he's going to have a role change today that not a lot of people are going to keep in mind as much, is little Jordan Humphrey. Again, it's like he's a tight end. You don't get excited about tight ends who don't have star-studded upside, who are in run-first offenses with a rookie quarterback in there. You don't usually get excited about those guys. So don't be shocked that I'm not saying that he's a smash play. I have him projected today right now for about 4 fantasy points. Don't be shocked if he scores 0. But if you're out there and you're seeing him run a lot of routes and he sees 3 or 4 targets at the tight end position, it's because he's transitioning to tight end and not a lot of people are talking about it or know about it. So little Jordan Humphrey's in play. Albert Wilson did not practice this week. He missed practice for a personal matter on Tuesday. Digging into it a little bit, I believe it was a court case in which he was cleared of all charges. I could be completely wrong, but an Albert Wilson in that area that looks exactly like the picture on DraftKings, Albert Wilson was cleared of all charges. So I'm just trying to connect the dots here. I didn't ask him specifically, but it looked like the same guy who's in the videos and the pictures. So he tweeted out the exact day that he's blessed and he's thankful. So I think that was him. He cleared all charges, so he's good to go. He's good to play this week. So some people might not think he's going to play because there's been no update to that status. But here, we're trying to smack you around with all the information you could possibly know and need, and that's one of them. So Albert Wilson himself is going to operate as the wide receiver, probably 4 today. You might see that Jalen Waddle moves to the outside a lot more in 3 wide receiver sets, and then that's where Wilson will operate in the slot. So probably the wide receiver 3, but if you count Gesicki, I'd say the wide receiver 4. So Wilson, I think with Jalen Waddle now back, you're still going to see Wilson see some decent overall upside chances here. You saw 27 routes in week 13 with Waddle in. He ended up seeing 8 targets in that game. I'm not expecting a lot of upside here. You're not getting downfield usage out of him. You're probably going to end up seeing him play somewhere around 40% of the snaps, probably run around 15 routes and see 2 or 3 targets, maybe 4 targets. It keeps him in play for sure, but it makes him look just like anybody else that looks good in this range. As we keep going, you get to now Nick Vinnette, who Nick Vinnette, somebody might be saying, oh, but Sal, you said Nick Vinnette is a run blocking only. He had a 6-target game earlier this year. Yes, that 6-target game, I completely understand that against the New York Jets. He was a little bit featured in that game. It was before you started to see more and more of Juwan Johnson as a tight end. He scored 7 or more fantasy points the last 3 games without Adam Trotman, 8.1, 7.8, and 7.4. One of those relied on a touchdown. Most of them are on about these 10 to 15-yard plays. So I get it. He's operating and basically getting a lot of his work in the play-action passing game. So if you want to prioritize Nick Vinnette tonight, I think that that's completely fine. I'm just here personally saying that I think that Nick Vinnette, Albert Wilson, and little Jordan Humphreys look a lot similar to each other, and that Nick Vinnette is currently coming in as the highest owned one out of them. So if there is a chance to maybe pivot and get to somebody else, I would be pivoting and getting to somebody else off of Nick Vinnette for guys in the same price range, like a little Jordan Humphrey or like an Albert Wilson. And now the final player that's in play for me, I don't think Preston Williams or Matt Collins are personally in play. Matt Collins might see a target in this game. That's about it. But Durham Smith is the only other guy that's in play for me today. And let's talk about Durham Smith. Durham Smith was running about 13.5 routes per game. He's just not the highest of reads, right? So when you're talking about now Devontae Parker back and Waddle due back, Waddle, Devontae Parker, Mike Gesicki, the running backs, those guys are going to be in the progressions more than a Durham Smith. When those guys were out earlier this year, especially when Devontae Parker was out, you had more 2 tight end sets. Durham Smith is more of the read. He's still running his routes, right? He's still playing 93% of the snaps the last time he played, 62%, 83%, 70%. He's still out there for more than half of the snaps. He's running 19 routes, 12 routes, 17 routes. It's just leading to 2 targets for 1 catch for 4 yards these last 2 weeks. He's not as high of a priority in the route progression, but if you just go back 2 weeks before that without Devontae Parker, he saw 10 targets, he saw 9 catches. So he's still going to be out there a good amount. He could still find his way on a 1-game slate into a 3 or 4 target game, or even a 5-target game, or even a red zone target or a touchdown. So it keeps him in play, especially at just $600. He's the only guy below $1,000 that's in play today. Below $1,000. Note I said below, not at or below. So when you're looking for value on this slate, there's some pretty clear pockets. Those pockets right now for me, if you're looking below $5,000, are Traquan Smith is the only position player that really gets me going, right? Really gets me going. But then it's the kickers and defenses as it is on most slates. Lean the Saints if you had to choose one, but really no real difference difference, to be honest with you. And then that only other pocket is like this range of a bunch of guys who project out for me of between all these guys of Lawrence Humphrey, Albert Wilson, Nick Vinnette, and Durham Smith. Their projections for me are between 4 and 4.8, right? So nobody is above 4.8, nobody is below 4. So they're all very similar. Their ceilings are a little bit of a different story, especially for the receivers in there, which is really just Albert Wilson at this point. But they're all used in the short to intermediate range. None of them have like amazing athletic traits outside of Albert Wilson, but he's just not used downfield as much. So this is an interesting slate. I mean, you could really pick and choose. I think that in this range, a little Jordan Humphrey and Durham Smith end up being the lowest owned, if that helps you at all. But yeah, I think that this is an interesting slate. There's clear pockets of where the value lies, of where the plays lie. And I think that this is going to make this a very fun live stream later today. So I appreciate you all tuning in. We will be live later today at 6 p.m. East Coast time. So come through, ask your questions, hit the subscribe button so you know when we're going live. Come on, just hit the button. Hey, and thank you for being here. Thank you for being here so much. I appreciate you all. Be sure to use that code CLASS. Last time is today to use the code CLASS over on Prize Picks. You get the free bet up to $100 moving forward, but you're not going to get that free course of 10 plus hours. It's $100 after today. So if you want to get the course after today, you're like, I want to get the course. It's $100 after today. So you have to deposit using the code CLASS over on Prize Picks. Not just sign up but deposit. First time deposit, you get those 2 bonuses for you using that code CLASS. I appreciate you all for tuning in. Thank you so much. I'll see you when I see you. I'll see you in the live stream later today, gang. And peace out and enjoy the rest of your beautiful, beautiful day.